I'm Gillian Drake, the director of New Works in Action at Spooky Action Theater. Today we have playwright and lyricist Clare Bierman, who wrote The Very Furious Kugel, and Kate Bryer, who directed this reading workshop. I want to talk to them about the genesis of this sweetly hilarious short play, the surprising elements, and their processes working in new plays and in new musicals. So I first want to introduce Clare Bierman, who is a Japanese Jewish playwright and lyricist raised in Los Angeles with some rabbits, a snake, and a bunch of finches. She's currently pursuing her MFA in musical theater writing at NYU Tisch, but only ironically. Kate is the Associate Artistic Director at Imagination Stage in Bethesda, where she has directed over 50 shows in the last 25 years. In addition to her work in theater for young audiences, Kate has directed at many theaters in Washington, D.C., including First Stage in Virginia, where she directed Fly By Night, written and composed by Will Connolly, Michael Mitnick, and Kim Rosenstock. That glorious production won the 2018 Helen Hayes Award for Best Musical, Best Director, and Best Ensemble Musical. And in May 2019, she directed The Oldest Boy by Sarah Rule here at Spooky Action, which was another amazing show with puppets and music. It was really beautiful. So Clare, let's start with you.
Sure, hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us about your inspiration for writing this play, and also a little bit of your interests or background in Jewish folklore, specifically Dybbuks and Kugels.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from my actual upbringing. My dad, I think, was not only a really passionate storyteller, but he was also a very Jewish storyteller. And I think a lot of the cadences and the stylizations of this play that I wrote in many ways come from kind of accessing him. And this was originally part of a kind of a proposed sort of monologue cycle, I guess you could call it, that I was writing, that I was going to title like Monologues for My Dad, or something for my dad to perform, because he was very much not an actor but a performer. And I think, like, I always, as I think someone I'm similar. I'm not an actor, but I enjoy the performance, and so I think finding that sweet spot is important to me.
Oh, that's really lovely. Kate, do you have some personal background in Dybbuks and Kugels?
Well, I was not raised to be Jewish, but my father was Jewish. And I actually did not find out that my father was Jewish until I was 15, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I think it was always there, but we just didn't talk about it. And then I became very interested in Jewish literature, took a lot of courses in high school and in college. And then I married a Jewish man, and I raised 3 Jewish children. And now Judaism is extremely important to me. And I'm a constant learner and reader.
Mm-hmm. How? So, all right. Anything else, Clare, about why a kugel and why a dybbuk?
Yeah, I guess for me, the kugel comes from, like, I read a lot about food. I love food. Food writing is basically how I found myself writing at all. I would I started writing at the end of college, my undergraduate degree, just writing about, like, food experiences in San Francisco where I was in school. And I think that came really naturally together with, like, my own food heritage, writing about Japanese New Year's experiences growing up, writing about other cultural experiences that other people were having. So I think the inclusion of food felt very natural in that way. And in terms of a dybbuk, I couldn't tell you for 1 second where that came from. Some divine intervention brought the dybbuk into my brain. I think it was because there's just something about, like, the ghosts and demons of Jewish folklore that are so like kind of sorrowful and searching in the world, that I find them really delightful and charming.
So we'll talk about that, the Kugel, in terms of puppet in a minute, because I thought that was, of course, that's like this really fun element of the play that's just so lovely. But before, I wanted to get past your background. I love that you're getting an MFA in musical theater as a lyricist. I don't think I've ever like interviewed a lyricist before. So it's exciting. That's its own little part of playwriting, of course. And my first, as I told you, I thought my first impression of this play was that, oh my gosh, this would make a lovely children's opera or musical. Have you ever considered adding music to this play?
I had not considered it until you mentioned it in that email, and now I'm ready to start. I'm like, it's funny. I mean, I'm very lucky because I'm in this program right now, that I'm just like surrounded by incredible composers every single day, virtually now, but that I have access to this incredible community of composers and collaborators that I'm really just like, yeah, I could start putting lyrics to this tomorrow and have a
both of these are
are
so vivid and have their own way of speaking, and they speak to each other and also out front. So it would be really fun. I can really see how it would be, I don't know, evocative as a musical. Oh, that's so great.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But tell me about your musical experience and how you're drawn to writing lyrics.
Yeah, well, I started I started just writing essentially essays, and then I moved to New York. It's honestly a very ridiculous story of me winding up doing lyrics, because it was like I kind of moved to New York because my friend had an open apartment and a 6-month sublease, that I was like, I'll just, 6 months, what harm could 6 months do? And I ended up finding out about the program during those 6 months and just like kind of diverting the rest of my life towards this thing very spontaneously. But as soon as I saw that, like, oh, I can study just lyrics, I was like, this is the perfect thing. I grew up playing musical instruments. I was in like bands and orchestras throughout elementary school, high school, college, all of that. But I wasn't a composer, and I realized like the proximity to music and the like musicality of language ended up translating really well for me into lyrics, and it's become something that I'm like now really excited about. And I'm realizing like lyric writing has become a big part of, I think, how I even write plays, and how plays can kind of command a sort of like poetry of the language without music.
Wow, great. So, and Kate, you've had a lot of experience directing musicals.
Yeah.
And I think Imagination Stage has commissioned a number of new musicals.
Oh yeah, we commission a lot of theater for young audiences. We've had a long history of doing that for 20, 25 years. And musicals are something that are, just very near and dear to us. And we've worked with a lot of different lyricists and composers and playwrights, a lot of teams.
How is it different to work with a lyricist as opposed to a playwright?
I mean, I think, what Claire just said about a lyricist being a poet is actually very true. I think that lyrics have to tell the story, but they have to do it in a very special way. They have to be very clever and very poetic. And so that's a really very particular skill, I think.
They also have to be singable.
Yeah.
To be singable, a lot of long vowels.
Yeah.
You need them, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And we have worked in a number of different ways with lyricists and composers, and it's a challenge. It can be a challenge sometimes, because what a composer wants musically may not work from a lyricist point of view in terms of the information that needs to be gotten across, and or a rhyme scheme or the rhythm of something from a language point of view. It's very tricky. And actually, a lot of playwrights and composers, like the playwright will write the lyrics. Being just a lyricist is a very special
Yeah.
still, for sure.
Yeah, so good luck, Claire.
It's very needed.
Very needed, yeah. A true lyricist, right, it's a very special thing. So I'm happy to talk about this. And Kate, just briefly, what drew you to this play?
Well, I think it's very funny. I think it's very clever. And I love doing plays that are magical and mystical for adults. I do them for children all the time, but children have a natural capacity to just accept the magic of the world. And adults, we lose that. And so anytime that I can do a play that brings that back to our audience to an adult audience is a great opportunity.
Yeah, and they get to be children again a little bit, and it's through that imagine, which actually is really a big part of spooky action, trying to kind of corral that imagination and take people to a really, not just like all plays take you a different place, but really somehow visually, physically, this idea that we are transporting into some world that is really unique and apart from our world is certainly something we strive for. So that's one of the things we were attracted to this play about, this fairy tale for adults.
Yeah.
So
good way to put it.
One of those things that so I have a couple of questions about, I think it was written originally for a 3-dimensional live performance. We have taken it to put it to a 2-dimensional. And so I want to talk about that both from Claire and Kate's point of view, but also in the center of this is this puppet. So we solved one of these transformation issues by using a Kugel as a puppet. And we had asked for impossible to stage plays. So for Claire, I want to ask about how did you see it before? Did you ever see it with a puppet? And the solution that we have gotten from 3-dimensional to 2-dimensional, I'm going to ask Kate the same question too.
Yeah, it's funny to think about this having existed in a 3-dimensional space. It was really written actually the first draft of this was written probably the week before lockdown happened. So it was it started getting written just at the very end of 3-dimensional space existing as a form for us. And at that point, that was when it was being written as a monologue. And I don't know, I guess there was something about it that doesn't even feel like it's so much just what my dad would have told me as he walked me to school or something. I almost don't even see it as existing on stage in some ways, until I started thinking oh, but it's a play, but it's actually a play. And then it got proposed to me to turn it into a two-person piece. And so it's funny, I think seeing it in any form feels exciting and magical to me, just because it does feel so pulled out of the recesses of my memory. I know when we were filming it a week ago or a couple weeks ago, I was definitely having that experience of this. I can feel the tugs on the synapses of my brain. It feels it's just going kind of projected directly onto the screen in front of me, which was totally fascinating. But in terms of the impossible element of it, it's funny. I guess I didn't even think about it as having any physical form. So then when it became pitched as a puppet, I was oh, that makes so much more sense than whatever I was thinking of, which was nothing. Well, I think I hear voices, and I think I was hearing memories and voices more than actual representations, and so it's exciting to see actual representations.
Well, in some way, I think that's the director's dream. You think up these crazy things, and you can then do anything you want with it. But so Kate, what did you? I know that there was when I read the play and thought of it for you, I thought of it for you because you have so much experience. The last play you did with us had this sort of life size little boy puppet in the middle of it. So I felt that you had that mystical a mystical imagination. And from all of the work I've seen, you have such great imaginative solutions to kind of staging and visualization. So that's why I thought of this for you. So tell me about a little bit about the process of how you imagined the puppet, or anything you want to talk about the puppet itself.
Yeah, so we hired Matthew Pauly, who is a puppet maker and also an actor and a puppeteer, to build the puppet for us. He is actually the same person who built the puppet for The Oldest Boy, and he's also someone that I've worked with a lot at Imagination Stage. He's built puppets for us for many, many, many shows. And he's a lovely person and has a fantastic imagination. So that was a great start. I think the challenge with the being two-dimensional and putting something on film, you know, we're in this weird sort of middle ground right now while we're waiting out the pandemic and trying to get back to theater. In that, you know, the question is, we already have film in our lives, right? And we already have TV. So what are we doing putting this on film, you know, doing these films? And I think that for me anyway, I think that I strive to be theatrical in my work, and to be theatrical in a film setting is, I think, is really unique, and it's really interesting opportunity. So, you know, there are a lot of ways that we could have done this, but I'm glad that we chose to do it as a puppet, because it is a theatrical way of telling the story. And I think that's more interesting, at least right now, when we're being, I should say, I don't mean this in a bad way, but forced to be doing these readings or plays on Zoom or whatever right now. But I think we're going to find after this time that there's little elements of these things that we've discovered along the way that we're going to bring back into the theater with us. I think it's really interesting, Claire, that you say that you heard voices, and that, you know, that you were so open to how things were interpreted. And Gillian's right, that is a director's dream, because for me, theater is all about the collaboration between all the artists and whatever anybody brings to it. And we're all working toward that one thing, you know, which is the play. We're all in service to the play. And when you say you hear voices, to me, that means that's amazing, because you're in service to your own play then, which I think is an amazing place to be.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I agree with that. So just briefly, because I think time's coming to the end, I just want to know if you have something, each of you, coming up that you're working on that you want to share with us.
Well, I'm in grad school in my last year right now. So I'm putting all of my mental energy into this thesis that I'm working on with the composer right now. Yeah, it's not like there's something to be like on the lookout for, but it's a super fun, cool process, and I hope the world of theater and immersion can reopen soon, so we can get this guy in there.
Oh, you're imagining this for stage, is that right?
We wrote the most COVID non-compliant show imaginable. I think we've really done it. I think we've really accomplished something here.
Good. Well, it takes a long time to put a musical up on the board, so you probably have that year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What are you doing?
I'm working. We're putting together at Imagination Stage. We're putting together a version of The Snow Queen with 4 people, and we're actually putting it on stage with live actors, but we're filming it. So we've created the set, and we are in rehearsal with very, very, very strict COVID rules in place. We are using masks during rehearsal and social distance for the entire show. So even on film, they're working in a sort of a movement technique that allows them to interact with each other socially distanced, which is kind of interesting. It really looks like stylized movement, which is, again, a real discovery during this time. And that's going to be filmed and then disseminated to schools and the public for the next couple of months. And there's a puppet in it, but I won't tell you very much about it because you have to go and see it.
There we go.
Or, you know, buy it, basically. Buy it online.
Okay. Well, thank you both for talking with us and for bringing to our audience this delightful modern fairy tale, The Very Furious Kugel. And thanks to the audience for watching and sharing the conversation. And so good luck to you, Kate and Clare.
Thank you.
Thanks.